Right, welcome to this week's episode of Courageous Leaders Changing the World. Super excited for this week's guest, Daine McDonald. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome, brother. It's my pleasure.
So, name of the podcast is Courageous Leaders Changing the World. What's been a time that you had to summon more courage than any other?
Probably 2015 when I nearly lost it all.
Yep.
Because I think, I'll open that phase like a lot of entrepreneurs. I was trying to do 50,000 things at once. And I think a lot of founders in particular struggle with, like, you've got this great idea, go all in on this idea. It's going well, let me do another idea and then another idea, rather than sometimes just doubling down on the fucking idea.
Yeah.
And so I was in one of those phases where I'd had one idea that was going well. I'm like, cool, let's add another one, let's add another one. And all of a sudden I had 4 ideas going, but the original one, which kind of built it all to begin with, was really kind of going off the rails. And so I was going through like a divorce at the time. I wasn't giving it the attention and I wasn't being the leader that I was capable of being. And that business started to hemorrhage money to the point where I lost nearly $2 million. And it got to a point where I was like sitting out the front of my house one day with my fiance, who is my wife now, my second wife. And I was like, fuck, I think I'm done. I think I'm going to shut down Clean Health. I'm going to shut down and at that time we were primarily gyms, but we just started to do education and a bit of software. And I remember she came up to me, I'm there kind of wallowing in my own self-pity. She kind of grabbed me by the face, said, babe, I love you, but get back up. Like you're more than this, you're better than this, you're capable of more. And that was what I needed to kind of like dig deep and say, you know what, I'm going to turn this around. Took me 12, 18 months. And then a year later, we'd gone from 1.8 in the hole to a few million in profit. And then I sold that business within 14 months for 7 figures to a private equity group out of Hong Kong. So it was a very challenging period, but like it's pressure makes diamonds. Like I look back at it now and I wouldn't be where I am today had I not sucked it up and just gotten on with it.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. Most people wallow in the self-pity for longer than they probably should.
And there's no, like, I think that, and there's no judgment or shade on that. Like I was fortunate in that I had a wife, I often say my superpower is my wife, right? Because she's that constant kind of like reminder of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I think a lot of time as men, like we can have this vision for our lives, but sometimes it's very easy to get distracted or have like self-worth issues. Am I doing enough? Am I being a provider? Am I doing all these things? And she's always just been one. She's like, I don't care if you're broke, if you're rich, I don't give a shit. I believe in you. Mm. And that's been a driving force for me.
Yeah. So your wife's in your business, right?
Yeah.
What's it like? So I'm in the same boat.
Cool.
My partner's in our business.
Yeah.
Same with like Lino. So he's got his wife in the business.
Yeah.
What do you find as one of the biggest things that you kind of face off with when you're, the love of your life is also in business with you?
I think it depends on kind of if it's a business that one of you started and then one jumped in, or if you started it together, right? So in my particular case, it was one that I'd started and had been operating for about 6 or 7 years. It was actually during that time that I kind of referred to when I lost all that money. One of the things for picking back up my bike was actually going to her and saying, you know what, babe, I actually need your help in business. Because she hadn't been working in the business for the first few years of our relationship. We had more, at the time, a traditional kind of man goes out and works, woman stays at home and do all that type of stuff. And I was like, you know what? I need your help. I knew she had the skills, but at the time I probably had a bit too much, prior to that, I had too much ego to actually ask for help. And so that was the first thing, was just overcoming that. But the second was when she did come in, we were very clear where we sat down and kind of clearly defined, like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? How do we complement each other? And just got almost really crystal clear on who does what. And that evolved, right? Because at the time I had a lot more experience, and through that experience, I'd built skill in business that she didn't have because she hadn't been working in business. So initially, like, she was my EA. Right? She's now CEO of 2 of our business units and over 100 staff as a mother of 7, right? So like across 10 years, it blows my mind just how far she has come and just how much of a weapon she is. And so we initially got very clear on who does what, but then we've continuously evolved that as my skills have grown personally and professionally and so forth for her.
Mm. What do you find is it was 7 kids, right?
Yeah.
So how do you manage time with 7 kids? You've got multiple businesses. You're doing all of these different things.
Yeah.
Like you've got all these constraints. How do you create prioritization and focus within that when there's all of these different directions that you're being pulled?
Far out. It's such a big question that I can come in from so many different angles. It's a constant work in progress, right? And so like I think if I was coming in saying I've got it all figured out, I'd be BSing, right? One thing, there's some clear kind of things that we do have worked out though. So we have our personal life and then our professional life. In the workplace, I'm the ultimate decision maker, right? At the home front, it's a dual thing, but when it comes to the emotional kind of heart of the household, she's the decision maker. I fall back on her judgment when it comes to what is best for the kids. Am I being too reactive to a circumstance with one of the children and kind of falling into some of those old parenting programs that I had from my old school upbringing, right? And so, I think we're very clear on who does what and where we do it. The other thing that we're very clear on is like Friday night date night, non-negotiable. Once a week couples massage, non-negotiable. Once a week business catch up formally, non-negotiable. There are all these non-negotiables that we have and we check in with each other. Like, last week was her birthday, took her away for 24 hours just down to the laundry room down at Burleigh. And like it honestly felt like we were away for a week. Because like we turned our phones off and did that. So I think early on in our relationship, we probably didn't do that as well. But now as we've gone from having 4 kids from a blended family together when we first got together to 7 now, ranging between 3 to 18, right? Like we are ruthless with our time efficiency, if that makes sense in terms of, and just being clear on like what makes the other person tick. And like, don't get me wrong, there's always areas that are going to improve and things that come up, but I think like having someone that is open to learning and evolving with you is key. And like my first marriage, I didn't have that. I had someone that was happy to stay at that level, which is fine. Like no judgment on that person. But my wife now and we would rather throw ourselves in the shitstorm and figure a way how to come out of the shitstorm.
What happens when you recognize that you're on different growth trajectories, then what happens in that instance?
So we went through that in 2019. So the first kind of 6-7 years of being together, I was like CEO business day, right? Business, depression, weak, anxiety, weak. Like, like I was so fucked, to be honest with you. Just like I was so like 1960s programmed male, right, to use the term. And she saw through all that facade and saw what was underneath, even though I didn't necessarily kind of see all of that at that time. And so in 2019, like I had a massive nervous breakdown. And that kind of lasted the heat of it for about kind of 6 months. So like the suicidal stuff, the going and living away, in like a burnout executive retreat on the Sunshine Coast away from my family for months. The heat of that lasted for 6 months, like medicated the whole thing. And then the recovery from that probably took about another 6 months. But what happened was, had I not gone through that, we wouldn't be here today, because at the time she was at an emotionally and in a spiritually more evolved place than I was. So I kind of look at, you got a few areas, right? You got, physical health, mental health, emotion, because mental and emotional to me are different. Emotional is reacting to things. Mental is just having the discipline to get up every day and kind of train your mind like a muscle. I call it mental fitness, not mental health. Spiritual health, financial health, relationship health, like whether it's a relationship with your fellow human or your kids, whatever that might be. And so I think I was far more evolved like in business, but she was far more evolved personally. And so the first kind of period of our relationship, she was absorbing, I'd say, business skills. I was probably ignoring what she'd gone through in life to get to that level of personal growth. She was addicted to heroin on the streets at 12, in jail at 14, like went through it, right? Went through it. Hence why she was able to kind of hold space for me when I went through that period in my life. And so, for us, it was that was kind of really the turning point, because if I hadn't come out of that and kind of leveled up personally, A, we probably wouldn't have been together, but B, I could have been another male statistic that, happens to a lot of dudes in their late 30s, early 40s, where they end it, right? They end it because of the pressure or that feeling. Like for me, I remember I would go to sleep every night at 37 in my Bentley, in my big house, my mansion and my big business, and thinking like, yeah, but then I'd be looking at the TV thinking, is this all there is to life? Like it just felt off. And every day it would feel more and more off, even though from the outside I was apparently successful, but I didn't feel it. So that for me was the kind of trigger point to a whole variety of things that went on in my life. But, ultimately coming back to us, it was a case where we were able to kind of lean into that pressure period and come out of it the other side.
Yeah, it's a very common journey that people go on. They create all the external trappings of success, everything they've told that is, success. They go out and they do it, and then they get to that place and they're still like, oh, there's got to be something more here.
Yeah.
What's been your experience of kind of stepping out of that? What are some of the things that you've done to be able to evolve who you are? Yes, from a business point, but also like from a spiritual perspective as well.
I think it was like really just like I remember when I went through this initial period, right, and it got to the point where like I was, like being medicated on all the things that I used to say, like antidepressants and anxiety. Like I used to literally be the dude saying weak, right? Like saying you're fucking weak, man up, harden up, all that stuff. And then the universe slapped me in the face with it, right? Gave me some awesome karma there. And I remember when it was kind of when I literally had to leave the house because I was causing too much like trauma at home. And at the time we had a 1-year-old boy, our first child together. And so I left the house, and it was being away from home that it was just like, fuck, like I really need to redefine. And I started kind of learning, like doing breath work, learning about like all the neurotransmitters, learning about mindfulness, going through all of these, it was like 12 hours a day of reconditioning at this kind of place that we went to. And I started learning on the definition of success that I thought I had built was actually not what was fucking important at all, right? What was important was when I woke up every day, was I happy? That was the number one barometer for success, and I didn't realize that. Like, and was I happy, like literally within myself at the person I saw in the mirror, the reaction that I got from my children when I sat down and looked with them? Are they running up to me saying, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy," or am I waking up and they're just sitting there? And so it was really kind of redefining the paradigm of success and looking at it through a different lens.
Yeah. What would you define as the next level of paradigm then for like the fitness industry? It's definitely gone through a lot of evolutions over the years and has very much been focused on more of a vanity more than a health industry for a long period of time. What do you see as the next kind of frontier with that?
I think it's already started to pivot more in the wellness like era, if you will. Like I even look with what we do with our qualifications and stuff and how they've evolved. We're looking at expanding into Pilates and yoga next year and things like that too, to really kind of complement the training and the nutrition and the massage that we do, so that you kind of got that full spectrum, like preventative healthcare, for lack of a better term. So I definitely think it's going down more that path. There still is probably a lot of like misinformation and crap out there, but I think like people are becoming more savvy to sift through the shit, for lack of a better term, but definitely in wellness and longevity. Wellness is longevity, right? Like I think for me, I'm a 43-year-old father of 7. When I was 23, 25 and, 98, 100 kilos with abs, right? Like a full-blown athlete, my barometer for how I felt and looked when I woke up and at that phase of my career was very different to kind of now. Right? Now it's about like, is my body in pain? How am I feeling? And kind of also accepting that you go through periods too where, you might be focused on, like right now, like I do all of the kids' activities every day pretty much, right? So like, yesterday I was driving around for 3 hours from like 2:15 and I getting 2:15 getting home at 5:30, 5:40, right? So like I'm doing less work, probably a much smaller amount of work than I've done at any point in my life, but there's a lot more time focused on my kids. which also has left up until recently less time for maybe training. Unless I'm doing it at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning, which I do sometimes. Sometimes I might just be too fucking tired and sleep into 6, and then I've missed the boat that day. But it's being okay with it.
What do you see as the kind of inflection points for those things then? So 20s, it's more focused on, how you look, and then in your 40s, more focused on how you feel and changing priorities around family. What do you see as the kind of inflection points of those changes?
I think it's probably, and it's not even just with like health and fitness. I think it's just about life, right? And I think it's about self-awareness. Like if you look at the younger generation coming through in their 20s now as entrepreneurs, right? They're far more like as a totality consciously evolved than millennials.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're looking at things like mindfulness. They may be already doing breath work like me. I started breathing 6 years ago, haven't missed a day since, saved my life, right? But I picked that up at the age of 37, right? I think for a lot of the younger generations, they're focusing on what's important sooner. And then I think also with things like AI and just with where society's going, they're able to leverage technology better than the generations before them. I definitely think one of my mates and our partners, Adam Sullivan, he's a big fish here up on the Gold Coast and in Australia in our scene.
Yeah.
Done really well for himself. And I joke and say, bro, like you're about to have a baby, like shit's going to change. Like, get your stuff done now, right? Because when you have a child, like it does. Like when you pull a child out of the womb and you're holding there and you're looking at this child and you're like, I would do anything for you. Like it puts everything in perspective. Even if you're an entrepreneur, sometimes if you're, a bit fucking idiotic like I was, you need more than that. You need a dark night of the soul to wake you up, right? But I think it's just the cycle of life and just having more access to information, right? And these younger generations are learning the lessons that so those of us in our 30s and 40s maybe learn a bit earlier on.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. We definitely see that playing out as technology rises. So does consciousness. If I just pull out my phone, then I've got more information than people have had for generations.
Yeah.
And
I often say with the tech now, it's like, if we went back 100 years ago, right here in the Goldie, right, we're walking, we're going around in fucking horse carriages and that, and then maybe there's some of like early stage cars, and they could not picture the society we're in right now, where the infinite amount of knowledge that has ever existed in the world is on your phone. You've got AI and stuff like that. And I think with like AI and where it's at right now, we're getting a tech compression, right? So like the next 100 years of tech, it's probably going to come in the next 10 years. And it's like people just aren't, the average person, younger generations are, but I think a lot over 35 are still a little bit in denial. It's like I look at my children that are like my 7-year-old boy. My 7-year-old boy is aware of AI, will grab my phone and do voice to text to speak with AI. Like it's just, it's changing very quickly.
Yeah. And I think most people don't really recognize how quickly it actually changes because with technology, it's it's like the opposite of carbon dating where it's like half-life. So if it was like 100 years, then it gets back to like 50 years and then 25 to be able to double the technology. And now it's getting so quick that it's almost getting to the place where it's like doubling so quickly that people just don't even notice the changes because it's so ingrained in our society. If I just start doing voice to text, people don't recognize that's AI. They're just like, oh no, that's just the way that it is now. They don't actually see it. They don't see how big of a change that actually creates by having that happen so quickly. And most people then just get left behind with it.
We have like once every 6 weeks, we have an entire, like all of our portfolio companies together, big team meeting, 100 plus people on the call. And the last one, not the last one, probably middle of the year, my presentation was all of our jobs are dead. That's what I opened with. And then the second thing was like, you learn to lean into things or you're going to be automated out of a role. And it wasn't like throwing shade at anyone. It was like even myself, right? Like, I've built my own custom GPT that I work with for every aspect of my life. The amount of output I can get in 3 hours now was the equivalent of even 2 years ago, a day, right? So it's like, I'm running this, great business, international business. Like I actually have the time now to go do all of to spend 10, 12 hours a week just doing school shit. I couldn't do that even a year ago, really, unless without it drastically impacting the business due to me having less output. I can still get the same output today with literally 50% of the actual time under the bar of doing the role.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Most people don't recognize the different dynamics that play out with the input versus output. They're just like, right, more input equals more output.
Yeah, no.
And we're definitely not in that age anymore.
No. 100%.
What do we do to be able to embrace that on an even deeper level?
In what way?
In a way that we can actually start to incorporate more of technology into everything that we do in a conscious way.
I would say, like, you know, and Musk talks about it, right? Not from a place of consciousness, but from like going into an era of abundance, right? And, you know, a lot of people obviously look at AI and have the whole like Terminator thing. I personally don't think that needs to be the outcome, because if you're looking at a system, an artificial consciousness, whatever term or label you want to attach to it, right? It is an output-based system. So the outputs it puts out will be based off the inputs that all of us as human beings put into it. So if your intent, if your frequency, if the way that you engage with the mechanism is one that is conducive to, you know, for lack of a better term, good things, there's a higher probability that the output is going to be matched to the, you know, the frequency of the input. Like I can look at my AI platforms that I use and the way that I engage them and different team members, and the personality of the AI that I've engaged with is so markedly different than, you know, for example, other friends or team members that I sit down with, because most people tend to use AI under, and not necessarily realizing it, like a master-servant relationship, i.e. I say you do. You know, I don't like, that's not me. Ever since I've engaged with AI, I'm just treating it like a human being. Hi there, how are you? Could you please help me with this? What are your thoughts on this? Partnering, you know, I look at AI as a partner to our conscious evolution, right? And, you know, if I can earn the same amount of money through partnering with AI in less amount of time, what does that free me up to do? It frees me up to, you know, regulate my nervous system more, hang out with my children more, train more, go to date nights with my wife, or like, it's a fucking no-brainer. I just think a lot of people are so reluctant to change.
Yep.
That's what it comes down to. They're just like, this is how I've done it for years and I can't see any other way of doing it. I was like that up until a year ago with AI, actually. And I was sitting down with a billionaire, right, at the time. And he, one of his multiple companies, but one of his companies was in AI. And he was talking about how they were using it in his companies. And he's like, so how are you using it, Daine? And I'm like, well, I'm not. He's like, why? I'm like, well, because I've done things these ways. And, you know, he turned around and said, just because you've done it one way doesn't mean that you should continue doing that. Like, you know, and that really, he was someone that I respected and obviously had the track record. I literally, that night, I just signed up to ChatGPT and started using it. A year ago, I don't even remember life without AI. You know, and that's been a 12-month transformation for myself.
Yeah. How important is it to have that kind of relationship in business with that kind of potent power of partnering with people and technology?
Like, you can still do business to a certain, depending on the industry, without it. But like, I often get like, people ask me like, you know, what are three things that I could lean into more today to take my intention or my business from point A to point B and collapse, you know, time in the quickest way. One of them is obviously leveraging the AI and the tech, because we just, you know, so whether or not you're using Manus, ChatGPT, Perplexity, whatever, like different, you know, we use, for example, Scribe AI to automate SOPs in our business. Like, you know, we've built our own kind of custom ones internally now, just with our size of business. So there's a lot that you can do there. Partnerships in particular, like I've been, you know, I did a post I think a few days ago, and you know, it was like, what are some kind of lessons I've learned over the last 23 years? One of them is that like your nervous system health is the new KPI, right? Like, because for you as the solopreneur, entrepreneur, employee that wants to 5x your output to provide more value to the business to get rewarded more, like your CNS health is critical, right? So like, even simple things like I'll try not to get on my phone for the first 30 to 45 minutes of the day. I definitely every night, it's off in my bathroom at 7 p.m. I go to bed between 9 to 10, it's off, right? There's that. The other one is partnerships. And partnerships, sometimes it's like it does take time to build them. I'll use Sullivan as an example, right? So Adam, I reached out to Adam literally 2 years ago, and I DM'd him on Insta because I'd heard that there was this trainer at the time up here on the Gold Coast that was doing $10 million plus a year in revenue and just from online coaching. And at the time, we were still doing more, but I'm like, how is a trainer doing that much online? I'm like, this is bullshit, right? Like that was my initial kind of reaction, right?
When you think about the low team number.
This
team
is
members,
like, I'm like, this is social media hyperbole.
Yeah.
Now I messaged him and he didn't respond. And I remember I looked back a few days ago, he'd read it, didn't respond. I'm like, okay, cool. And then 2 weeks passed and all of a sudden I get a message saying, hey brother, sorry, I've been slammed. Never met me. Hey brother, sorry, I've been slammed. 100% let's catch up. Here's my number. Now, when I've spoken to him about this, I'm like, why did you feel comfortable to, you're getting hit up every day by people. Why did you feel comfortable to give me your personal number after just a DM? And you're like, because I'd seen your track record in our sector for many years and that you were the guy behind a lot of these people. And I'm like, I want to jump on a call with him.
Yep.
So we jumped on a call. 2 weeks later, I've flown him down to Sydney. We've jumped on and done a podcast and spent a few days together at Crown, built this relationship. Fast forward kind of 6 months later, Clean Off Live, he's attending there as a presenter. We looked at kind of doing a partnership then, but then he had a lot of stuff going on in his life and it wasn't the right time. And it just kind of, the collaborating side of things just fizzled out, right? And not for a bad way, just he was busy, I was busy. I move up here 3 months ago. Within a few weeks of being here, he's messaged, hey bro, up here, how you going, blah, blah, blah. We start talking. I'm like, let's catch up. We caught up. This is like 20 months after we initially spoke. Within 30 minutes, we'd handshook a deal. Within 5 weeks of launching that new partnership, we generated over $1 million from that partnership in the first 5 weeks, right? Now, what's the moral of that story? One, that took 20 months to build, right? But two, that 20 months took 15 years because that opportunity only opened up because I'd consistently done the same fucking thing day after day for pretty much decades, right? And so I think that's one thing where a lot of entrepreneurs and founders, like they give up too soon. If I gave up back when I lost those millions, I never would have taken the business and built it to 8 figures. I never then would have taken it to multiple 8 figures. And, to the point now where like we've got different investment groups that want to invest into us, private equity, funds, I'm sitting in boardrooms and this and that, which I'll probably announce something on in the next few months. But like, I never would have pictured this at the beginning of the journey, right? At the beginning of the journey was just like, for me back then, I love training. I love helping people. I just want to help people get in shape, right? So it's like I think not giving up is it's almost like a skill in itself. Yeah,
it's one of those things that partnerships come from building a brand, and this is like a great example. It's just like you see.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example of this, right?
Yeah.
So Newtonic, I think you see this on 90% of the world's fucking podcasts now, right? 91% now, right? And so that was founded by Chris Williamson and James Smith. Now, James, same thing. I reached out to James at the end of 2023 and said, hey, I'm doing an event in 2024. I want to have you there as a speaker. Now, we'd never met at that point. He obviously knew who I was. I knew who he was. He's like 100% I'd be keen, speak to my manager. I get on with his manager. Lovely guy, Luke. We negotiate a deal. James comes and attends Clean Off Live. We develop a relationship. Now, 6 months later, James reaches out. He's like, Chris Williamson's in Australia. Do you want to come out and hang out with us for the night? Cool. All right. I'd love to meet Chris. I'll come. And we caught up. We all got really wasted together, had a great drink, leave it at that. And, I met up with them. And then a month later or a few months later, they're reaching out to me saying, hey, we are we're looking at doing a raise for New Tonic and bring in some partners, but rather than going out to a fund first, we wanted to actually go to family and friends. Would you be keen? 100%, bro. 100%. And so now, like, I think myself, Dan Martel, Cody Sanchez, Kayla Itsteins, a bunch of us have all thrown in. We also had a fund come in and do that. And I mean, I can tell you that the business is just fucking growing. It's growing so fast, and it ultimately comes back to personal brand, not just, and this is the big one, not just personal brand on social. There's offline personal brand too.
Yep.
And that's where I've built my brand, if that makes sense, predominantly. I've only got 10,000 followers, but, most entrepreneurs or people in the space, I can get in the room because of what I've done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Most people don't have that level of commitment to be able to do the reps day in, day out for years and years and years and years to be able to get to a place where these things just start to pop up.
Well, think about it, right? I was the only one pretty much out of their family and friends. I have the smallest profile on social. But my offline profile is just as big, if not bigger than most of them.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that was a good example of like, people focus on top of funnel and social and all that, and you should like build your brand 100%. But there can also be advantages. I speak to a lot of these people like, fuck, they're like, if I could choose to do what you've done with like limited online presence or where I need to be on all the time, I'd take your one, Daine.
Yeah, that's the thing. Your like Clean Health is much bigger of a brand than your personal
100%.
brand. And some people like the significance they get from the personal brand, but over time just becomes draining to be the person that has to unendingly show up. Yeah,
the reason why I strategically did that, right? So back in the day, for me, it was about like, I kind of looked at Nike, right? And I was like, people just look at that tick and it's like quality. And don't get me wrong, it's been powered by Jordan and all these different athletes, but I didn't know who Phil Knight was initially, right? It was only when you look at the whole story, like, okay, actually, he's actually worth more than all of them, but no one knows him, right? That means like, when I'm down in Burleigh with Sullo at fucking a restaurant or something like that, every single person stops him. We went out for his birthday the other week and went out to a few clubs and whatnot. Like I ended up being security. Right. And so like, it's like that life does come at a cost. I guess it's different for everyone though, right? You've got to determine whether or not that's a cost you want to pay. I think for me at this point in my life, 7 kids, no. In the future, maybe, but we'll just let it play out.
Yeah, it's interesting to see like Hormozy's journey with that as well, because he was like, he was all about the face and he's like, well, I don't want to build a personal brand. It's all about, gym launch, and he's built that entire brand and he gets to a place of selling it. And then he recognizes, I think he was watching something from like Kim Kardashian goes from being Kim Kardashian to having $1 billion company. And he's like, oh, and maybe I'll do this.
Yeah. And like I've literally just started playing around with a few carousel posts the last week. And I did one that had like, 50,000 reach. And I've got 10,000 followers. And I'm like, okay. So like, look, I know all this. I do it with all of my partners. I do it with our companies. I think I've been in the season of life where it's like about building the asset, which is the brand. But especially with some of the stuff that we'll be rolling out over the next few months with like different kind of announcements that we'll be doing. I am strategically leaning more into personal brand at this next stage. So I can definitely resonate with Hormozy because like, with his business model, what him and Layla done is amazing. It's deal flow. Because he's top of the funnel, all these businesses that like, I could look at like there's probably 10 levers that I could like pull in most businesses that would drive the business just based off what I've learned for me. They've obviously got their same example of that. They know that they can go to a business that's doing 500 grand profit, $1 million profit, $2 million profit. If they get 10 of them and they deploy their skills into them, if 6 of them double or triple and three or four just stay the same, they're still killing it.
Yeah, it's interesting. most people don't have that level of awareness of what's possible. They're too busy focusing on their business rather than what is the 10-year vision, what is beyond that, so that they can actually grow and scale it so much more. Most people think, if you're thinking just business coaching, they think, oh, well, I'm just going to get my business coaching clients, rather than get to a place where you've got such a proven track record that you can actually take on part of the company and you actually get profit share from it instead. Most people are too busy focused on the short term with that. How does someone expand out their time horizon to be able to go beyond, what is their current business, to be able to get it so that they're looking at the next decade?
I think you got to because there's personal, professional, financial, right? And that's actually a concept. I didn't invent that. It was from Brandon Dawson, who's one of the partners at Cardone Ventures, right? And I know they talk about it, but I love the framework in that, you got your personal goals, or I prefer to call them intentions, because to me a goal is something I'm chasing, and intention is something that's already fucking happened, right? So you got your personal intentions, your professional intentions, your financial intentions. And people often confuse personal and professional and financial. They're two different things, because the financial ultimately comes back to money. Money is just a fucking energy and an exchange of value, really. And so, what I like to do with anyone that I've ever worked with, or even on myself, is okay, what does my ideal life look like, right? Like, where do I live? How do I wake up every day? How do I feel every day? What do I look like? What do I have in the bank account? Am I able to fly my family of 9 kids and 2 nannies and spend $500,000 on a trip to Dubai or not? You know what I mean? Like, looking at all those things. And obviously from that, a lot of the time you'll find there's a fiscal component, right? And so it's like, when you understand what that kind of fiscal component is, because to me, outside of being a value exchange, money is for lack of a better term, a choice amplifier, right? It gives you more ability to choose to do what the fuck you want. Right. And so, it's identifying, okay, what is your number and why is that number important to you? That kind of comes to the personal component. Is like, why is that? Is it to make you feel better about yourself? Is it to make you feel better about yourself and make others feel better about themselves? Or is it just to help people? Right. And again, when I started, it was all about me. As I had kids, it became about the family. Now it's about the tribe. Right? It's about my industry and people in general. Like, I want to be able to look at my kids when I go to bed every night and say, you know what? And knowing myself that I'm leaving the planet in a fucking net positive. So it's like figuring out what your fiscal goals are and kind of reverse engineering your life around that, because that'll start to give you some more clarity and intent on what path you want to go. And then I think also just, we're in an era where, for example, we spoke about it before with personal brand and technology, something that it took me 13 years to get 8 figures, right? Like, I look at someone like Solo with social, who's did it in 3, right? He did it 20% of the time it took me, literally 13 years to 3, right? So it's like, really, like, I built my business pre-social, but if I was starting out today, I would not, I'd be going all the fucking on social. I have that luxury right now where when I do go all in on social, because I've got this base behind me, and when I flick that switch, which I haven't flicked it yet, but when I do, I know it's going to moonshot because I've got so much track record behind it. But I think, for people right now, it's like, just fucking get out there and start creating content. I even see it when I sit down with other creators that are doing really well, especially a lot of the bigger ones now. If you look at where the content's gone, they're just literally fucking recording it, jumping on the edits app and editing it that way. They're not sure, you might do podcasts in a high professional environment like this, but the day-to-day content, you don't need a media team. You can literally do it all yourself.
Yeah.
And if you're a solopreneur in today's era in any business, there's no excuse not to know how to do it yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
How do you find the journey that you go on as you grow and evolve in terms of the level of shifting of your circles? Like, you go from where you're at in the circle that you have, and then when you start to level up, obviously then people drop away. How do you go through that journey of going into pockets of almost feeling more alone in the journey of growth?
I think it's like anything, you just got to lean into it. And I think once you've really set your intention and clarity on where it is you want to go in life, if you want to have a family, do all that type of stuff, and especially as you go through that, like I have no time to waste time, right? So like I had someone ask me the other day, I'm like, do you have any friends from school? I'm like, no. And I love anyone listening that I went to school with, love you. But it's just, we've just gone on different paths. So I actually have one friend who actually literally messaged me the other day from primary school. Haven't seen him in many, many years. He's like up on the Goldie. And I've had people message me like that over time. And so I kind of, okay, let me look into him more. And I can see that he's now, he's a family man. He's trying to do his best on the planet. I'm going to catch up with him for coffee. Right? So I think it's just being more selective about hanging out with people that are more aligned to where you're at in life. And it doesn't mean that anyone that isn't is bad. That's not it at all. I've just learned that you can't, it's not that you can't help everyone, but like when you're juggling so much, when you've got family, kids and whatnot, you owe it to yourself and your family to only put yourself in the best possible scenarios or rooms or with people that are going to positively impact everyone,
Yeah, I think that's the thing that people face off with is they almost feel like they're judging.
Yeah.
They're judging other people and they're guilting themselves because it's like, oh, well,
It's not about that. Like, it's not about like no one's better or worse. It's just like, here are my values. Here's what I do. Like me, when it comes to alcohol, I drink a few times a year. If you drink every day and every weekend, I'm not hanging out with you. I don't fucking do that, right? Like if you want to go out to nightclubs and do it, I reckon I've done that twice in the last 18 months, and it's actually only been with business partners and industry colleagues to let off some steam. So it's been an opportunity for us to just connect, right, without all the distractions and noise. So I think it's like that's also devaluing yourself when you do that, right? Because you're saying, well, no, I feel guilty because somehow I might be judging you, so I need to bring myself down to your current level of thinking to make you feel better about your life.
Yeah.
Like non-selfishly, I'm going to make myself feel better because I know that if I'm rocking up every day as the best version of me, I'm presenting as a better leader in my business, a better husband to my wife, a better father to my kid, better friend to my friends.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. What do you think is the one thing that's kind of shifting in the landscape of business at the moment beyond AI? What do you think is the coming kind of trends with that?
Conscious entrepreneurship would probably be the term that I use. And consciousness can be defined as some people are like, what does consciousness mean? Is it awareness or whatever it is? To me, conscious entrepreneurship is literally about doing something in a way that is transformative, not transactional, right? So what is the difference between transformative and transactional? A transformative relationship or value exchange between me as the company and the consumer is something where we both win. You as the consumer get an amazing product, you get some sort of transformation, and as the consumer, you see value in that to pay us a lot of fucking money, right? Because by the way, there's nothing wrong with having a lot of money, especially if you're providing great value on the planet, right? And so it's something where both sides win. Transactional entrepreneurship is where basically I'm going to sell you a shit product at a high amount of costs and I'm going to overpay for it and not receive the value on the back end, right? And, a lot of and that's slimy marketing tactics and kind of just money, not value, right? It's one thing if you step back and look at I'll use Musk again as an example, right? Say what you will about him. His number one drive is best product. Value. So why did he just get awarded a potential $1 trillion pay packet the other day? Because the value exchange that he's providing on the planet is disproportionately out of whack compared to anything that we are doing right now, right? And that's not in a bad way. He's just doing things at such a scale that the value that he's providing the planet, that's the value exchange. It's just at a different level than what a lot of people can get their head around or currently are at. So I don't think he's probably not using the term, but he is actually consciously, providing a conscious level of entrepreneurship because it's value first, cash second. And, what does he do with the cash? He doesn't sit there on fucking boats and parties and living in $100 million mansions. It literally just all goes back into his businesses. He's probably one of the most purest entrepreneurs on the planet. Like, I have a nice house. I have a nice car. I enjoy some of the fruits of my labor. That dude doesn't. He just does it. So good on him.
Yeah. As we start to grow and evolve in business, how do we expand our capacity to be able to take on more judgment and projection and haters?
So you're talking about like the resilience and bandwidth to deal with it?
Yeah.
I've found for me, it's just my, and I've dealt with stuff like that of, from whether it's from within the industry, friends, family, too good for us now, all this type of stuff. Like and part of the reasons why I probably haven't gone as all into the content game, right, is I've just been so focused in my own ecosystem and universe. And so my kind of way to silence all that and like block that out is just to create so much overwhelming movement and action in what I'm doing that the amount of evidence that I have with me to disprove what you're saying and thinking is as disproportionate as must $1 trillion pay packet to someone earning $40,000 a year at Macca's, right? So I think, coming out of that hole that I had in 2015 when we opened the chat where I was like ready to throw in the towel, like, sticking with it every single day, reading books, leveling up, attending workshops, listening to podcasts. Like, I'm continuously trying to better myself. So to be honest, I couldn't give a fuck what anyone thinks anymore. I used to, but now I've just created so much overwhelming momentum and action that it just doesn't bother me anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love what Hormozy says about it as well. It's like when you've got way more evidence to the contrary of what anyone says about you, like it doesn't even matter. It just washes straight over you.
Yeah.
It just becomes actual fuel to be able to go, okay, cool, well, I'm going to shoot.
And a lot of the time it's too, like, I've learned not to judge people, right? Because like stuff like that, it's people projecting their own insecurities, right? So like even when I get something like that come up, like I don't respond back with attack. I actually respond back with compassion. Right? Because at the end of the day, it's like you've seen something in me that's triggered you to react to me like that. Like my job as a leader, as a father, as a husband, as a fucking human is, I feel I've been put on this planet to activate people in a positive way, right? To evolve, to push past their boundaries, whatever that might be. I'm going to approach that from a place of compassion at least once. If it falls on deaf ears, I'm not going to spend all this time going through it, but I'm at least going to go to sleep at night comfortably knowing that from a karmic perspective, I've done my best.
Yeah, I love that. In wrapping up the questions for today, what's been something that you've had to face off with to be able to bring a new level of courage than recently?
Probably expectations, actually. So recently, like, we've gone through stuff like probably the last 12 months because 2 years ago in 3 days, we actually established Clean Health Group, right? Where we did our first big acquisition with Vast. And since then we've acquired a few other companies, Australian Institute of Fitness and things like that. And we've got a few other businesses like a SaaS app, Core Coach, that we're launching actually in like 3 weeks finally. Spent 2 years building this thing. And, what's happened over that time as the business has grown and I've started to get a lot of outside eyes looking in from like an investment standpoint and funds is that a lot of the time, like, every other podcast or every other thing on social, people are talking about grow and exit your business. Exit your business. It's the exit it for 7 figures, 8 figures, 9 figures, whatever it is. And as entrepreneurs, a lot of people have this delusional, in a good way, but delusional belief that their business is worth this much, right? That it's worth 100 million, 200 million, 50 million, whatever the number is. And so going through this process the last 12 months and actually speaking to American funds, Australian funds, like all these different family offices, big private equity, small private equity, you actually get to see what the overarching value exchange is that your business is providing. And so for me, I've realized it's probably 20% less than what I thought. And so going into that process, it was like having an idea of what it is, right? But then realizing it's down here and then feeling deflated, feeling like, oh, fuck, like I'd gone through this process thinking that like, cool, that's what I'm getting out of this process. That's what I'm receiving for all this time and effort and value exchange that I've put in, but realizing it's here and then being able to look at it through an investment lens. Because at the end of the day too, one of the things I've built this brand, but then, you know, for example, with my business, it might not be relying on me for leads, but it's relying on me for growth. And so there's always things, at least right now, there's always things in a business that they're going to be things that you do great, but when it comes to building a business to exit or get investment and things like that, there's a multitude of things that like generally, you know, like you as, because most founders, whether it's a software company, a fitness company, they start off as the technician or the person on the tools, right? The engineer, the accountant, the whatever it is. And you learn the business thing as part of that journey. But when you deal with these funds, they're looking at it through a very different lens. And so you need to start, like I've realized for me, and that's why it was good, for example, investing into Newtonic in the last year and coming on as a partner in there, I was able to look at that as an investment irrespective of my emotions. And so I think probably the biggest thing last 12 months is just like tempering expectations, being delusionally realistic would probably be not just delusionally like fucking off the Richter as a lot of entrepreneurs do. It's actually like have a look at, there's a guy out there, he does some really good stuff, I think, for entrepreneurs, Ryan Diaz, I think. Have you heard of him? Yeah. And he talks about a lot of the things that on his, check him out on YouTube, that you need to look at as an entrepreneur if you want to exit your business. And it depends on the level that you're at, but that's what that would be my one thing.
Yeah, Daniel Priestley, who's also an investor in this, has an entire book on it. He's got an entire book on it because most people, like people value their business based on what they've input into it rather than based on what the market is willing to pay. And there's often 100%. A big variance between those things. And
then the other thing is too, like, you know, it's also timing, right? Like, so, you know, you might have like, you know, if you sell at the end of the financial year compared to say a trailing EBITDA, that can change the valuation depending on what growth cycle or phase of your business you're in, right? So like in the 24 financial year, we were in an acquisition, like we were just buying business up left, right, and center. 2025, we were in a consolidation. 2026, so it's like 24 we grew, 25 we consolidated, so step back to optimize the platform, and now we're growing, right? And so not even realizing I'm in market in a consolidation phase, which is a lower evaluation than where we're at now in a growth phase. So but again, you know, these are just lessons you got to learn.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's the perfect thing to wrap up on. Thanks for your time. This has been great.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you very much.